Good morning. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 11th day of April 2023. My name is Sam Gituku, and it's time we have a conversation here about the state of affairs in the country, both politics and economy. And I have in studio Dr. Makali Mulu, who is a member of parliament from Kitui Central in Kitui County. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, viewers.
He's also a member of the Budget Committee at the National Assembly. Dr. Mary Mbithi is a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Good morning, viewers.
Great. And she teaches matters economics at the university. And shortly to join us is Bill Okero, who is a former senator in Mandera County, but also now talking here about matters politics and the economy. He'll be joining us shortly. But if you look at the papers this morning, on the front page of the Daily Nation, it is pay strike looms in public service. Thousands of government workers have threatened to, threatened a work boycott to push the National Treasury to release their salaries, delayed for up to 3 months, even as President Ruto's administration faces a massive cash crunch. That's what you'll find on the Daily Nation. Then they're asking the question, will this be the turning point? President Ruto will today chair a crucial meeting to decide the fate of his ceasefire talks with Azimio Chief Raila Odinga, even as the ruling coalition leaders yesterday restricted the agenda to recruitment of poll commissioners at the IEBC. Then on the front page of the Standard, Ruto's big test to fix economy lying in ruins. President returns to a full entry indicating an economic crisis after admission that there is no money to run government and pay salaries with the economy in a mess and a broke civil service. His work is cut out. Then you'll also find that important conversation about bipartisan talks top of agenda as MPs resume duty. And that's where I want us to begin this morning. Let me begin with you, Dr. Makali Mulu, also to welcome former Senator Mandera. Good morning.
Morning.
Kero. It's good to see you.
My apologies.
All right, no problem. So, Dr. Makali Mulu, so we understand that the Kenya Kwanza team is having its parliamentary group meeting. Of course, among other issues is to discuss the fate of the talks, but also their agenda for the new session that you begin today. What for you is a must-have, knowing that already your side of politics has already picked some 7 names, 3 senators and 4 members of the National Assembly. Now, moving forward, because there's a lot of heat about what should be discussed, what should not be on the table, what is the right path to follow?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. Sam, I think the issues which should be discussed in this country are well known by all Kenyans. Mm-hmm. And our side of the coalition, that is Azimio One Kenya Alliance, we've indicated very clearly what needs to be discussed. The first item we have said is critical that is discussed is the cost of living in this country. Because some of us who are elected, mm-hmm. we always, on a daily basis, we interact with the people in the grassroots. And we have a strong feeling of what is happening there. And some truth be told, the truth is that Kenyans are suffering out there. Mm-hmm. Life is becoming almost impossible in terms of even the basics. And that's why we are saying cost of living is a critical matter. The other critical matter is the issue of IEBC commissioners, which we have said many times. It's important that it's discussed because we can't separate politics and economics in this country. At the end of the day, politics will have a huge impact, mm-hmm. matters economy. And if you don't stimulate the politics, more likely you'll not even get right on the side of economics. So that's another matter which I've said will need to be discussed.
Right.
And all over the time, you know, the other matter is the issue of whether the suburb be opened. We have said that many times. That's now pure politics. And that is a result of the last year's election. That matter is a matter, as Azimio side has said, is important. And we have said why it is important. Mm. I think reasons have been given why it's important. Mm-hmm. And when you look at what is happening...
But how do you pursue that in a parliamentary conversation?
I'm saying this are the matters, but the bipartisan approach, yeah. I think what came out from the discussion mostly was the bipartisan approach. Mm-hmm. The focus was more on cost of living and the issues of IEBC. That's what seems to have been agreed. Right. But we are saying at the back burner, those other issues are also important for Azimio. But for me, we really deal currently with the issues of cost of living and issues of IBC commissioners. With the time, the other issues could also be discussed, but critically the issue of cost of living. And that's what we're saying, Sam. When you combine that with the fact that the papers are saying workers are not being paid, this is at the national level and at the county level. Some of the rural economies, when time you travel in Kenya, some of the rural economies depend purely on the salaries of civil servants. Now that no money is going to the counties to implement and development projects. Right. It is these salaries which help the small shopkeeper to be able to make some small profit which can take care of their family. It is these salaries which are paid, are used to be paid to schools so that the students remain in school, and as a result of that, the schools are also able to conduct some economic activities to grow that local economy. So when you see people are not being paid, it is a very serious matter. And all said and done, I think we should not also forget about the morale of those who are working. Imagine, Sam, you go to work, and our whole cabinet secretary, who is in charge of coppers in this country, tells you that be prepared for salary delays. What does that do to your morale? Even to wake up early in the morning. Like now we've come here this early in the morning, it's wet morning. Right. Imagine if you are at work and this morning is such a wet morning, and then you are being told go to work and you are sure, after 30 days I'm not even sure I'll get a salary. I think these are some of the statements which you are saying people need to take time and think through what they say. Okay. More so when they are on public platforms, because this could easily demoralize workers and push them to the streets to demonstrate.
Right.
Yes.
Senator Kero, we've been here before after an election, only that this time round it's coming 7 months way after a new president is in office. But when you look at what is being proposed, the bipartisan approach, the issues on the table, what Azimio is raising, what Kenya Kwanza politicians are saying, we can only talk about IBC matters. Do you think it's going to resolve this matter once and for all so that after the next election you don't have similar challenges?
Thank you. I think the issue is discussions are not going to resolve the future. We have heard them before many times. But what is important is the stability, the political stability today. And I think that is the most important thing. And a bipartisan parliamentary approach has worked before. You'll recall during the time of Moi in 1991, we had a similar situation, and it worked to resolve a number of issues. And so it's something that I think is necessary given the situation that we're in today. And I think both sides now appreciate, even the ruling side of the government, with the current situation in of the economy. Right. I think the last thing they would want is something else, that would divert their attention. So they would not have much choice now with the kind of situation in which the country is in, than to sit with these guys in the Azimio and find out how they can address some of the issues. But in any negotiation, there will always be people asking for the impossible. But I think all those things are political posturing. Some of these things, personally, I don't believe issues of server, opening the server. No one can open the server. This is a matter that has been decided, by the Supreme Court. But there are issues. Even the cost of living is not something they can meet. Whether they are members of parliament or outside parliament, you can meet and resolve. Right. In a meeting that, yes, we have now resolved the issue of cost of living. No, these are not that easy. But I think clearly what we are seeing is the same arguments we have had during the BBI debates. That Azimio has premised the BBI on the need to do away with the winner takes it all and have an inclusive government. Where power is shared. Looking at, someone gets, 6 million, another one gets 6 point something, very close elections should they power. So they're premising, I think, their arguments on the need to include, the loser in the last election in somehow in the running of this country. But I think it's not going to be an easy discussion, but what is important is that at least it will cool down the temperatures It might be drawn out. You know, there are no low-lying fruits in these arguments. Mm-hmm. These are political, and both sides have very significant numbers of hardliners. But I think what is important is that it will cool temperatures and at least get people off the streets. That's what is important. I think the need to talk will take people off the streets.
I take interest in what you just said about the BBI. And you remember when I spoke to the former Prime Minister, 18th of March, he was talking about had the Kenya Kwanza administration, all the leaders in it, not opposed BBI, wouldn't be where we are. So clearly you can see that alongside all these other issues that I'm speaking about, there's a conversation you want to have about opening up the Constitution and looking at some of those clauses. But do you think, looking at the current political climate, do you think that's a possibility that it can get to that position, that let's look at the Constitution, let's review some of the clauses to provide for what you're calling inclusive government?
No, I think personally my view is the Constitution is not the issue. And we do not need really to go that route of the Constitution. It's going to open a can of worms. Everyone, not just politicians, but every sector, every interest group, everyone in this country will be keen to have something amended here and there or included. I think the issue that is being raised about inclusiveness in government is already provided for in the Constitution. For example, in the appointments that are being made in government, the law is very clear. Both the Constitution is very clear how those appointments are supposed to be done. Every region, every community, every must be considered in political appointments. In the way resources are allocated, both at the national and county governments, this also addresses the issue of inclusiveness and equity. So the question is, when you have a situation where the government ignores that. But otherwise, I do not think, you remember the issue about, for example, in the BBI, that will increase the county allocations to 35%. Mm-hmm. There's no need for changing the Constitution on that. The Constitution says the minimum should be 15. That means the maximum is open. Right. You can go to 40 if you want to. So the Constitution is not the issue, but the Constitution has always been the punch bag in our political discourse in this country that, we blame. If government doesn't do well financially, they say the problem is the Constitution. It created so many offices. Right. So I don't think the issue is Constitution is about governance. And so those are the things that they need to be discussing.
Right. And Dr. Mary, because you've seen this before, you've been teaching at the university for a couple of years, what does it do to the stability of our economy, and how much time should politics take in our lives to ensure that our economy also doesn't suffer?
Yeah, the economy is really intertwined together with politics, because we know that politics impacts on economic activities. So the sooner the discussions are held and a way forward is found, the better for the economy. Because when we do not have, groups agreeing in the economy, then we have issues like what we've been seeing. They only, contribute to strengthening the weakening side of the economy. When we have demonstrations, for instance, people are not going to work, we do not have production taking place, we do not have, that will definitely impact on GDP, on the output of the economy at the end of the year. So we are simply, if the political sides, take into account, sit down and discuss and agree on the way forward so that we have agreement and people going back to work, that will be great. So that is one thing that the economy is looking out towards. And of course, one of the most critical things is the agreement, whatever is going to be discussed, we should see some inclusion, which means inclusion in terms of participation in the economy by all the peoples of Kenya, and that will be important to contributing to development at the county level as well as the national level. Yeah.
And because in the previous administration, Uhuru Kenyatta came and said that during the standoff between the repeat election and remember the infamous oath-taking of Raila Odinga, that the country lost close to 1 trillion shillings. I don't know who was counting, but how important and how do you even account for that, for such kind of a loss economically? Is it possible?
It's possible in a way because what we know is if people have not gone to work, then it means there's no production. And if there's no production, it means that's a loss to the economy. The same with businesses. If people do not open their businesses, then that means a lot of sectors are impacted. When people are not going to work, the transport sector will lose because people will not, they will not get to transport people the way they do. The businesses, the person will not sell what they sell, and so on. So when we have such disturbances, they definitely impact on the economy, in the business, as well as in productivity of people, and that will show in the economy, in the total production this year, or within the quarter, or within that month.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Daktari, I look at the statement that your coalition released. We need a proper constitutional review to cure the governance defect in 2010 Constitution and remove the last vestiges of an imperial presidency. Reads your statement, not you as a person, but the coalition. What exactly would Azimio want altered in the Constitution?
You know, Sam, there are things we must agree that, and to me, we need to look at it this way. As a country, do we have issues of concern? Do we have issues which we are saying as Kenyans, these issues, so long as they are in place, it will be very difficult to get this country moving forward in the right direction. And I think you can categorize these issues to different categories, where you could have issues to do with governance, as Honorable Okello is saying. You could have issues to do with politics. And you also, I think there are also constitutional issues. If you look at the whole the BBI framework, the initial BBI framework, it actually categorized issues into you remember the 9 points, I think there were 9 points which needed to be looked at.
Yes.
And even though we are saying that there might be no need for constitutional reforms, for me, I think there are some areas. For example, the issue of winner takes it all. The issue, like now, you can see now currently the Kenya Kwanza government, they are proposing the issue of creation of office of the opposition, official leader of opposition. When you look at the current constitution, is that provided for? And if it was to be provided for, would you not need a constitutional amendment? Because there are some things we are all saying, if you want this country to be stable, and I must agree with him that all things done and said, for now, even if we don't achieve anything else, the peace we are experiencing as a result of suspending the demonstrations as a country is very important for economic activities, like the doctor is saying here. So we are saying, for me, it's like issues are known, which need to be looked at, Sam. It's nothing new. And when you look at these issues, Sam, we are saying, even as we approach this bipartisan approach, which we all agree to, it might not achieve, like issues of cost of living. We can't solve them today. But there's an advantage by having those talks. What is the advantage? We will sit on a table. You will have a Azimio team this side. You will have one Kenya Kwanza side, team that other side. I will be able to say, as a country, if we are to sort out issues of cost of living, what are the short-term issues? What are the medium term and what are the long term? And then from there, we find that the whole country politically will be on the same page. So that when we are in parliament, we don't have crossfire where people are talking, they're not from the same point. The other issue which is important, Sam, and to me, when I look at us talk and by Kenya Kwanza talk, it reminds me of when we were young boys. We would go out there and draw a line on sand and say, if you are a boy enough, cross that line, and then I will show you dust. To me, I think that is not the best way to approach talks. We need a situation somewhere, let people have their hardline position, but by the time we start talking, we must agree that there will be give and take. And unless we, for the benefit of this country, because the truth of the matter is things are not good. They are not working well. Economically, you look at this country, we have challenges. You look at this country politically, we have challenges. And solutions will not come from outside. Okay. Solutions are going to come from us, Kenyans. So even as leaders, when we go to talk, please, let's go to those talks with an open mind, knowing that public interest, Kenyan priorities will take the first line, not individual priorities.
But Mheshimiwa, you haven't answered my question, because I asked of a proper constitutional review to cure the governance defects in the 2010 constitution and remove the last vestiges of an imperial presidency. Is there anything specific, or that is work in progress?
No, you know, it's actually reforms around the issue of the issue of, you remember what was the proposal initially? If you look at the BBI, it wanted to broaden the governance, where you had to bring in the position of prime minister. Now, constitutionally, you have to bring the position of deputy prime minister, and then the ministers were to come back to parliament. And what is happening now? That position has already been created indirectly. You see, like now we have a chief cabinet secretary, which actually, by in quotes, is supposed to be like a prime minister. So those issues have not been issues. The issue of inclusivity, that anything we do, okay, as Bilo is saying, Honorable Bilo, that the issue, like the issue of the, let me talk about the issue of that 5% allocation to counties. I remember the same Kenya Kwanza was saying that there is no need to have this in law. It can be done because we have only a minimum requirement, not a maximum requirement. Exactly what Honorable Bill is saying. But look at what is happening now. This year, Sam, how much you have allocated to the counties in terms of percentage. And you could see the struggle that the body which is supposed to advise the government on how much should be given, called CRA, it proposed for 17. Was it for 17 or for 14, something like that?
470.
Yeah, 400 something. Now, the government, the executive, initially, last year, we gave them 370. So the government only agreed to add additional 15 to 385. So you see, even though we are saying it should be done, imagine if the law was there, we would not be discussing. It would be minimum 35. But you see, these are the things we are saying.
Even though, and you'll touch on it in the next hour,
yes.
Even now, the counties haven't received a penny. So even if you increase it...
Exactly. So to me, this is what I'm saying.
Comes a challenge.
But you know, the thing is, they have not received, but at the end of the day, they'll have to receive that money. It remains always in arrears.
Okay, all right.
That's the truth of the matter.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Let me comment on this question you raised about the imperial presidency. I think, really, if you look at this constitution, it's one of the best you'll find in Africa. There is no imperial presidency. Really, that's what we addressed in 2010. We have adequate checks and balances in this constitution to deal with the powers of the president. The president today cannot appoint cabinet secretaries without parliamentary approval. He cannot do the same thing with judges or ambassadors. Anything he does, everything that this government does, the executive, it has to get approval by the representatives of the people. And the reason is because of that checks and balances. And then we have a very robust judiciary. We have independent, institutions. Not just the DPP, but all other independent offices and commissions. All these have been created to ensure that there are checks and balances and to address that issue of imperial presidency. What we have today is, unfortunately, a situation where the independent institutions, including parliament, have failed in their role completely. And they've become an appendage, of the executive. That's where the challenge is. So it's a question of governance, that's the problem that we have. Number two, we sat as Kenyans and said we want a presidential system of government. You cannot have a system of governance that you have decided, and then you say, in order to, take care of some politician, we have to keep amending the constitution. For example, the presidency system allows for a majority leader in the House. We have a minority leader in the House. The minority leader is like head of opposition. Right. That's his role. So what are you going to do in a situation where you have a leader of minority in the House, and then you want to create an office of opposition leader? Some things don't work. I mean, we cannot just create offices because we want to, please people. And I think our biggest challenge, let me tell you this, is because many of our leaders believe that you have to be in government to be in politics, to be a successful politician. If you're not in government, there's this perception that your people have been locked out, that you lose out on contracts, you lose out on business, you lose out on money, you lose out on power, on influence and everything. So everyone who speaks says we must be in government. But that's not the way politics works everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, there are people who run for election. One party gets elected. The other parties end up as opposition to check on the government. But you cannot say everybody has to be in government. And this is where the challenge is.
But do politicians miss out on those things? Business, power?
Well, I mean, look, there is everyone wants to be in government. When you are in opposition, you do. That's why they want to be. Everyone wants to be in government.
Okay. Different motivations. Now, I want us to take a short break here. On the break, when we come back, we'll be speaking about more on this, but also on the state of the economy at a time that we know that civil servants have reported not having been paid so far. There's a promise from David Ndii, the economic advisor of the president, that by next week the salaries will be released. The counties have said they haven't received any money for this year, at least since January to now. The last time they received resources was in March, but those were resources that should have come in December. Stay tuned. We have more after the break.